Good afternoon, class. My name is Will Spivey, and today I have the unique privilege to talk to you about a man by the name of Dr. James Dobson. Dr. James Dobson is a nationally renowned counselor, family mentor, and really nationally known for his radio shows that have touched the lives of millions of people across this world. But today the objective of this briefing is for each listener to understand who this man was, what he did, and why it's important for us as leaders to understand. But to begin with, let's talk about a little bit of his background. He was a man that was born in 1936 in Shreveport, Louisiana, a very humble home. He had great parents that raised him up the right way, and eventually he grew to be very intelligent. And so he had a full scholarship to the University of Pasadena out in California. In fact, he was captain of the tennis team there for a couple of years, and so he was actually quite the athlete. In 1967, he actually went on, though, to go after Pasadena and pursue his doctorate, and he got his doctorate in counseling and psychology from the University of Southern California. But like I said earlier, he did grow up in a Christian home. He grew up where his father and his grandfather had a significant role in his life. In fact, they were both ministers, and he would actually travel around with them and watch them at work, watching them do ministry with people. And so it was very interesting how he became to be the man he was. One day while he was in high school, he felt called to be a counselor towards diving people to seek answers in counseling for Christian ministry. And so he took all these next steps in his life, like I said, going and receiving his doctorate to help further that. Interestingly enough, though, before he got to this Christian counseling field, after he received his doctorate, he began to teach in the School of Pediatrics at the University of Southern California. But interestingly enough, after that, he felt God calling him to pull him away from that. He was actually also working at a hospital, children's hospital out in California, pulling him away from that, and eventually starting a radio show and a family ministry that would touch millions upon millions of people in over 150 countries. So let's talk about some leadership characteristics that have made Dr. Dobson one that has allowed us to be praiseworthy. First of all, he was a man that had a vision, and he not only had the vision, but like Dr. Shannon talks about, he carried the low fruit, had humble beginnings, and he carried it to fruition. When he left his job, he was making a lot of money as a teacher and professor at the University of Southern California's medical school. But he felt called to leave, and when he left, he found a two-room place to rent, and he started his own business, and he called it Focus on the Family. And his basis on this was he believed that keeping the traditional conservative biblical view of marriage and having men that would lead was key to keeping the culture from affecting the home, and that's why he created it. In 1971, he wrote a book that was sold millions of copies, and he called it Dare to Discipline, talking about how parents need to be able to discipline their kids lovingly for their own good. Presently to this day, after its humble beginnings, Focus on the Family now reaches over 250 million people in over 100 countries. And it's just incredible the way he saw this vision and carried it out. Not only did he have a vision, but he was also guided by a strong moral compass. Like I said before, he saw the problem that culture was negatively impacting the family, the view on family today. And he really wanted to take action. He was guided by a strong moral compass. Some examples of this: not only was he raised right, he was raised in a household where he was disciplined, where he was loved, and he was taught. But here's a great example. And everyone knows in 1980, one of the most famous controversial interviews Dr. Dobson did was he interviewed serial killer Ted Bundy a couple hours before he died. And it's incredible because Bundy actually wanted Dobson to talk about pornography with him. And after much controversy, Dobson actually interviewed Bundy, talked with this man, and actually got Bundy to talk about the negative impact this kind of material had on his life. But he did it because he was guided by this moral compass. He felt like this was what he needed to do, and he felt like the world needed to see it. What's really cool about this is that after he was done giving this interview, he sold this interview, made over $1 million. He took that $1 million and didn't keep it for his own ministry, but gave it all away to anti-pornography, anti-child abuse ministries across the country. So he's a man that's guided not by finances, but by morality, and that is huge in this time and day. Most importantly, though, he was a servant leader. This man did not reach the millions to make millions, but he reached the millions to make a difference in his society. I've actually been to where he actually stepped down in 2008 from Focus on the Family, but I actually have been to his office, and they have a huge memorial there, and on it has this man, this drawing of a man, and it says that Dr. Dobson was a great man, and it has this huge quotations that I'll always remember. It says he was a man that prayed. I think as servant leaders, if we really care about people, we think about them often, we pray for them, and he spent many hours a day on his knees thanking God for what he was doing and praying for these people he was witnessing to. Not only did Dr. Dobson impact people by writing these books, but he also was very well known for counseling young people. You could go online and watch several videos on YouTube of him mentoring young kids in high schools, going into high schools, sitting on classrooms, and just offering advice, walking kids through life, being that family mentor to these people. And Lord will know only one day how much that has impacted the lives of people in this country and around the world. Next, let's talk very briefly about his leadership styles. First of all, I believe Dr. Dobson was a transformational leader. In our textbook, it talks about how a transformational leader is someone who sets out to empower its followers and nurture them into change. There's a really cool story about Dr. Dobson that shows that he is transformational. At one point early on in his career, he was speaking over 150 times throughout the year, and he was losing his relationship with his wife and kids. So what he did was he trained people up. He took them along with him, and he trained them to be able to present what he believes and how he believes it. And it's essentially delegating, but he brought these people up and he transformed them and empowered them to make the change that he, as the leader of this organization, wanted to make. And it was just incredible to read about. You can check out some of the links at the end of this presentation and read them. Also, he was an authentic leader. He wasn't someone that, in our textbook, it talks about how with authentic leaders, they are transparent. And one thing about Dr. Dobson is he was never had closed doors. He never was closed about what he was doing. He had very clear intentions, and he let his coworkers in the world know about it. He was also very self-aware. Dr. Dobson often got a lot of encouraging letters, but a lot of times he got a lot of letters that people were telling him he was doing the wrong thing, and it often made him reflect on his own motives. And he didn't take that negatively. You can read in his biography how he read through these things and took them with heart. And if he felt like things needed to be made changed, then he made them as necessary. But ultimately, he was a man that did what he practiced what he preached. And that is what has made the biggest difference in the lives of millions across the world. Some of his achievements, he's written over 30 books. Dare to Discipline is probably one of his most famous ones. In 2008, he was inducted into the National Radio Hall of Fame, despite many anti-conservative Christians trying to destroy his reputation while doing that. He was also voted in 1985 as the Layman of the Year by the National Evangelical Council, and he served as a counselor for 3 of the past presidents that have served our country. But ultimately, the reason why I picked Dobson was because of his character. He was a man that practiced what he preached. His vision, the fact that he had humble beginnings and that he saw them to fruition, and finally his example. He was a man that was who he says he was, even when no one was watching. He saw the problem in society and he sought to make a difference, and that's why I chose this man. This concludes my briefing. Are there any questions?